Alright, just give it 1 second just to make sure we are live. Give me just 1 sec. Let me get my notes ready, and we should be good. In 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, my name is Brandon from Indycar Central, and this is episode 2 of our podcast. Our apologies for not having another episode out in a while. We've been busy with so much other stuff, as you guys know. This is usually the type of year when school usually starts to come back. A couple of us have started college, and some of us started our final year of high school. And due to all that and being gone, I think the last episode we did was during the polo controversy. So, hello, Jack. And our last episode was during the polo controversy. So we do have a lot to catch up on. Obviously, I'm not going to be catching up on like the races between the polo situation and to now. I'll be catching up mainly on Laguna Seca, Indy Lights stuff, rumors, wrapping up the season as a whole. Again, more rumors. And then finally, we're going to look at my predictions that I made at the beginning of this year that I thought were going to be so correct, which turned out to be quite the opposite. So, without further ado, here we are. Also, peep the background. That's Scott McLaughlin qualifying at Mid-Ohio back earlier this year in July. We got to travel out there and go watch them qualify and practice along with the Road to Indy guys. Special thanks to Mid-Ohio for letting us come out there as a media for photography. Or photography, not media. We'll get there. So, first off, I want to sit back a little bit to last week. We were at Portland International Raceway in Portland, Oregon. And Road to Indy saw pretty much their 3 championships lock up, but Indy Lights continued their season into this weekend at Laguna Seca. But Road to Indy saw USF 2000 and Indy Pro 2000s wrap up their championships, and they saw Michael D. Orlando winning the USF 2000 title, and they happened to see Louis Foster winning the Indy Pro 2000 title. Now, Louis Foster has been, I swear, one of the most consistent people on that tour in his Indy Pro 2000 season. He made just an unbelievable season. Had almost 100-point gap over second place, and could have locked it up actually at Gateway if stuff would have gone his way particularly, but ended up wrapping it up in the first race at Portland. And Michael D. Orlando, his championship wasn't as, let's say, easy as Louis Foster's was. He pretty much had to fight tooth and nail the entire year with Miles Rowe, and it was Michael D. Orlando pretty much and Miles Rowe that were the 2 realistic shots at that championship, and it ended up being Michael D. Orlando coming out on top. And it's not to say that he was more consistent, it was just the fact that I think he had more wins than Miles did, and just I think Miles did have a couple DNFs to his name too. And overall, they both just fought really aggressively. And speaking of Louis Foster in Indy Pro 2000, it has been announced that he will move up into Indy Lights next year with Andretti Autosport. Now, car number I don't think it's been announced yet, but if we would know. And coming back to Laguna Seca this weekend, we saw Indy Lights wrap up their championship. We saw Stingray Robb and Christian Rasmussen win their races, respectively. Robb winning race 1 and Rasmussen winning race 2. Hello there. So, and Yeah, it was a pretty action-filled weekend, as a matter of fact, because in qualifying you saw, of course, Joseph Newgarden spinning out, missing a chance at the second round. Then you had Scott Dixon just overall missing the second round just based on speed. He just didn't get out of the second round, or the first round, which was unbelievably surprising. And it showed in the race. Dixon was in the mid-pack the whole race, could not find the right strategy, got caught up by a bad yellow, and Newgarden fought tooth and nail the whole dang race from the back all the way up to second. I just found out from Stingray. Oh my god, that's funny. Yeah, it's a really badass name. To be named Stingray, that's a really badass name. That's cool, Jack. I can't believe that. Yeah, Nolan Siegel was telling me that he was really hyped up for the Indy Lights race that he got to take place in, because Indy Lights debuted Nolan Siegel for HMD Motorsports. He got to race in race 1 and race 2. Did overall, I'd say he did good for his first outing. Obviously, you're not going to come and set the world on fire on your first start. At least that's usually not what happens. I'm not saying it hasn't been done before. It's been done quite a few times. But honestly, Nolan ran clean races. Race 1, he had an issue. And I believe race 2, we finished top 10. He did good. I honestly say he did good. But Nolan just told me he was really excited for that opportunity. And I really hope he does get the race next year in Indy Lights, because it's been rumored that HMD is rumored to have 8 cars. Yes, 8 cars, but they wouldn't just run it under one name. They would have, I would think, from what I heard, right, they would have 2 separate teams forming, and then they would work out of the same giant factory, which I do believe they're building in Indiana, and they would have one team in that shop operate 4 cars, and they'd have another team operate 4 cars, and just overall, I feel like that'd be really overwhelming to run, but it shows how committed they are to that championship, so. Now, next up, we go on to qualifying, or we go back to talking about qualifying. Will Power, what a guy. Unbelievable record that he set, passing Mario Andretti's pole record at 68 poles. Will Power claimed it. And he is now the winningest pole award driver in IndyCar Series history. And speaking of Will Power, he definitely showed that he deserves all the accolades he's ever gotten, as he put on a thrilling race at Laguna Seca. May not have won, but he stayed up in the front most of the day. He ended up finishing 3rd. Newgarden got 2nd, but it was noted that if Will Power did finish 3rd or higher, he would clinch that title there. And at the end of the race, I think the points were in Power's favor, to the point where even if he finished top 5 or higher, he would still clinch it, no matter where Newgarden would finish. Plus that bonus point Will Power got for winning the pole, plus the bonus point he got for leading a lap, also pretty much helped Power in the long run too. And Will Power did clinch his 2nd championship over the weekend. And usually, to my understanding, Penske does run their cars that win their championship. Penske runs their cars if they win the championship. They usually run the number 1, so looks like Power won't be running the number 12. They'll be going to the 1. So that's something. Now, Alex Palou. That's a name we've heard a lot this year. He, honestly, he put in one of the most dominant performances of this season in a spec car that is really hard to do. But he, at one point, I think he had a 30-second lead over 2nd place, which is unbelievable in a spec racing car. And he just dominated it. Ended up winning the race. And it was confirmed today that Alex Palou will be returning to Chip Ganassi Racing for the 2023 NTT IndyCar Series season, which is honestly a bit surprising. I figured after the whole court settlement that they would go separate ways, but it was stated that Palou did have one more year left on his contract, so he, I guess, had to buy it. And there was rumors that Zach Brown would potentially buy out that contract, but With what I've heard, that contract is rumored to be at $10 million, which is not really favorable to buy out for one guy. Especially knowing that you got to offer that money to him to race for you. I just feel like it would be too much for Zach to do, especially since he's got his hands full with the whole Piastri and Ricciardo situation over in Formula One. Now, speaking of Formula One, Colton Herta has been rumored to drive for AlphaTauri next year, which is kind of confusing because he's not close to a super license. I think he's about 10 super license points off of the required number. I think the required number is 42. I think he has 32. Now, there was been rumors that he would test for Alpine later in the year. Also, he did test for McLaren earlier in the year, and Zach Brown did state that he was impressed by that test. And there has been a push, I believe, from AlphaTauri to get the FIA to approve a super license for him. And if they would approve that license, it is my understanding that Colton Herta would most likely take that seat over for next year, and Pierre Gasly would potentially be out of a ride. Which, honestly, I don't think is fair, but nothing's fair in racing, I guess. At least when it comes to money. Now, that's not saying Herta doesn't have talent. Honestly, when we get to the predictions list, you're gonna see how much hope I had for Herta this year. So, now, another thing we did find out was that Juncos Hollinger Racing would be running a second car this year. Now, I did write down on my notes that they would be running a second car next year, but I forgot to put the number. I do believe it's 77. No, that's what they run now. I'm sorry. If any of y'all know, let me tell me in the chat, and I will mention that, but that's a mistake on my part, my fault. And back to what I've said, Indy Lights' grid size will increase pretty substantially next year. I've already reported that Cape Motorsports and Exclusive Autosport will be adding their teams to there. Juncos Hollinger is making an effort to come back. And Andretti said they're trying to increase their team. Of course, you guys know about the HMD increase. And Indy Lights is looking to have a very competitive year. Surprised it was such a clean race because it got hot there compared to Saturday in qualifying. Yes, that is one thing. Saturday qualifying was a little cloudy. The race just had sun beaming down, made the track really slippery. As you guys saw, there's a lot of people off getting in the sand. And surprisingly, there wasn't any particularly wrecks, I would say. Of course, the only caution you had was for Callum Ilott, who did start on the outside pole, unfortunately blew an engine late in the race and put it into a great run that I sure think he may have had. And a couple days ago, it was announced that Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, and holy heck, we got the owner of D-Force Racing in the chat. What is up? Good luck to you guys over at COTA this weekend on your USF Juniors Championship. I just want to wish you guys the best of luck with, I believe Matt Clark is his name. And, yeah, did good last week at Portland, ended up winning his first race. So, but yeah, it was announced that Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing will be adding a former Red Bull Formula One engineer to their roster, which, based on the season that Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing has had, or RLL, I should say, to abbreviate it, I would think they would need about as much help as they can get. That's not to say they didn't have good runs, of course. Christian Lundgaard obviously put on a really good year, I would say, at least for his terms. Almost won a couple races. Graham Rahal ran really good at Portland. Jack Harvey honestly didn't have the season I thought he would. And we'll see that again on the predictions list. And finally, on my list, we have that Felix Rosenqvist has finally been announced. He will be returning to Arrow McLaren SP for the 2023 IndyCar Series season. Now, to no surprise of many, Rosenqvist gets that seat again. It was heavily rumored that Palou would take that seat over after the whole controversy came out with him. And then you have Alexander Rossi moving from Andretti Autosport, who made his last race over at Laguna Seca with that team. He's moving over to a third entry now over there next year. And it was rumored that maybe Rossi could potentially be taking over that spot as Rosenqvist, but it was noted that Rosenqvist was under contract with McLaren, but it didn't specifically say which series. And since Aero McLaren SP is the only branch they race in is IndyCar, it's pretty much guaranteed Rosenqvist will be racing next year in IndyCar, which is honestly great. Many of you guys have seen the videos of him and Pato. They're just the best of friends, and honestly, he just looks happy there. He just looks happy there, and he's good. He's had great runs this year. Quite frankly, he's outran Pato a good portion of the time. And that's not to say Pato's outran Felix most of the time, but there's been times where Felix has just flat out beaten Pato. Like, he's been great this year. And the Hard Compound has joined. Thank you very much for tuning in, and hope you enjoy. So, now, finally, we move on to the unbelievably bad predictions that I put in at the end of this year, or the beginning of this year, I should say. And let's get into these, because I think some of you guys are going to laugh. I did get a few right. I'm not going to say I bombed them all, but I got a few right. So, first one is just a little random one I figured I'd include. I said no one would flip this year. Unfortunately, we did have one on Fast Friday. We did have Colton Herta getting, I believe it was in turn 1, got a little loose and slammed the wall at Indianapolis and just caught air, flipped over. Got out all right, but it was a pretty bad looking crash. Reminded me of the old IRL days with the car, because that car would always have a tendency to catch air on the front and backflip. But glad Herta was all right. Was a pretty nasty looking wreck. I happened to be there to see it, and hate seeing those types of wrecks. I'm hoping one year I do get that prediction right, because I just don't like seeing those wrecks, especially in IndyCar. They are scary to look at. But they're safe, and it's good. Now, here's one that really surprised me, and the whole team itself surprised me. I said Romain Grosjean would win his first race. After what he did last year with Dale Coyne Rick Ware Racing, I figured he would have a stellar season, get a couple wins, maybe get a top 5 points finish, but holy cow. Inconsistent runs. I mean, he had good moments. He had great moments at some point, but honestly, that whole team was down compared to last year and the year before last year. Andretti Autosport really, I would say they really got to look into this offseason with a lot of optimism, hoping they have a lot of optimism going into next year, because they did not run up to par of what I figured they would run. Herta did not run the best. Rossi, he won at Indy, but still, he did not run. There was a bunch of runs that he did not run good at. The only time he really started running good was after he got announced to McLaren. And then I guess he had confidence boost, and he just really started performing good starting at Detroit. And they finally ended up winning the second Indy GP race. Third, we have this one. I kind of wanted it to be right, and it was right, but I really wanted it to be right, not thinking it would be right. And it was Jimmy Johnson would get his first IndyCar top 10. I was right. He got his first top 10 at Texas when he finished 6th in an unbelievable run. And then he backed that up about 3 months later at Iowa's race 2 when he got a top 5. Now, race 1 the day before, he ran good. He ran in the top 10, led a bunch of laps, as a matter of fact. But just strategy caught him out, and the tire wear. Battled a really wicked loose car at the end, ended up finishing 11th, unfortunately. So that's one right so far. Then I said Alex Palou would win the Indianapolis 500. I was very close, but he did get caught out, I believe, on a pit penalty. But after the run he had last year, I figured there's just no way he wouldn't run good this year. And he did run good. He ran second for a good portion. He led a good portion. He just got caught out on a bad strategy, and then it ended up costing him. Now, here's one that also surprised me. Jack Harvey wins his first race. after the run he had with Meyer Shank Racing, another thing about them, they were down a lot this year too. But last year, Harvey ran great runs with Meyer Shank. I think he got second quite a few times. He ran top 5 a lot of races. This year was just abysmal. And combat that with the fact that he missed Texas due to a practice crash. This was a horrible season for Harvey. And for that whole Rahal team, except for Lundgaard. But honestly, it surprised the hell out of me. I figured Harvey would at least contend for a win. I don't even think he got a top 5, which surprises me. And the fact that Hy-Vee put up as much sponsorship as did, it's not like they were missing funding. I just don't know what was wrong with that team. I can't put my finger around it. No, this one surprised me the most out of anything. Now, I know I've said I've been surprised a lot, but this one tops it. And it was, Herta will contend for a championship this year. I don't know what happened over last year's offseason, but Herta went from a wicked fast, winning, contending driver to struggling to keep a top 10 points in the standings. Now, he did win the first race at Indianapolis at the road course, but other than that, he did not do good in a lot of races. Like last week at Laguna Seca, he was arguably a favorite going into that, because of the past 2 races he had won there, and he had not just won, he had dominated that race. He struggled throughout qualifying, throughout practice, throughout the entire race, ended up finishing below the top 10. And that's just something that really surprised me. And the fact that he only got 1 win. Alright, sorry about that. It looks like we had an audio glitch. My bad. Alright, we're back. Let me check where I was at. Okay, restart. Okay, yeah, Herta. So Herta really, I think Long Beach, he was doing pretty good at, and something he did a lot last year, crashed in the lead. Or he crashed contending for the lead. And Herta, I think, has got to work on his aggressiveness, because he pushes it super hard late into a run, and it just messes him up. It did at Nashville last year. It did at Gateway last year. He's just got to work it up. Now, I'm kind of glad I got this one wrong, but honestly, I figured it would happen, because after he won last year, he has not really been good until he won this year again at Toronto. And if you know who I'm talking about, it is Scott Dixon. I said he would go winless this year. Now, at the beginning of the year, it was looking that way. And then we got to Toronto, and he does it. And then he does it later in the year at Nashville. And then he gets third in the championship. I don't think he got third, actually. I don't remember, but he was a championship contender, let's just say that. He came back from a wicked he came back from far in the points. He came back to finish top 5 in points. Scott Dixon, I say, made a great turnaround year, and added 2 more wins to his name, including being second on the all-time win list, beating Mario Andretti. And here's my third one, I believe. Nope, this is my second one right, and this is the only one I've gotten right. And this will be the last one I've gotten right. So I got Jimmy Johnson gets his first top 10. I got that one right. And I said Christian Lundgaard would win Rookie of the Year. Honestly, he had his first race last year at the Indianapolis road course in the fall, and he put on a really great performance. And I figured, hey, that's his first start, and he's already doing runs like that. He's just going to blow it out of the year. At the beginning of the year, it did not look like that. As I said, Rahal had a bad start to the year. But throughout the year, Lundgaard just kept getting better and better and better until eventually we get to the second Indianapolis road course race. He finishes second to Alexander Rossi. And many say that he should have won that race after the penalty given to Rossi after having a illegal water bottle, I guess you should call it. And then he ran great at Portland. Ran great at Gateway. Hell, he ran good at Laguna Seca, finished 5th. But overall, he ran a great year. It was consistent up at the end of it. And that's how you win that stuff, is you have to be really consistent. Dave Malukas came close. Dave Malukas is actually the closest rookie to winning a race this year, I would say. Because Rossi had a big lead at Indy, and Malukas was closing on Newgarden at Gateway. He really was. And it's just unbelievable. I say both Lundgaard and Malukas would probably get a win next year. That might go on my predictions list. I'll release those after New Year's, so stay tuned for that. And finally, second to last, I said Pato O'Ward would win 5 races. He won 2. I came into this year with a lot of optimism for Pato O'Ward after last year. I figured he would have that fire and redemption to go try and do this. I finally said Pato O'Ward would win this year's championship. And honestly, I'm not saying I could have been any more wrong, because he did good this year. He just wasn't consistent, and the engine failure at Mid-Ohio really hurt him in the standings in the long run. But the second at the Indy 500, that helped tremendously as well. But Pato O'Ward, I said would win the championship. He did not. Of course, Will Power ended up doing. Actually, Pato didn't even make it into the contention race at Laguna Seca. He was knocked out of contention at Portland, and he ran great at Portland. He ran top 5 most of the day. It's just the fact that so many other runs before that race he had ran bad kind of hurt him in the points, and it really lowered his long run. So yeah, those were my predictions that I made at the beginning of the year. I got 2 out of 10. I really need to work on some stuff, because while I do know what I'm talking about half the time, I do not have a good prediction. At least not long runs. But I was close on a few of those. And a lot of them I had the right mindset. It's just a lot of people let me down. So, yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of the IndyCar Central Podcast. This has been episode 2. And we actually don't really know when we would make a 3rd episode, as it is the final, as the season has unfortunately ended. We do have the Road to Indy makes some stops this weekend for their final part of the year. The USF Junior Series will be racing at Circuit of the Americas to wrap up their championship. It'll be between Alessandro Di Tullio, Matt Clark, and I believe Sam Corey. And they will wrap up their championship there. Of course, the Road to Indy Winners Update, will be making a post on that when that comes out. And my name is Brandon, and thank you for watching IndyCar Central.